Okay, so what you're going to do as you're ready, and you can just listen up for one quick second. I'll be brief. I'm not going to, do too much here. But for each of these four, and I know many of you have done some of these before, it depends on what classes you have or haven't taken, is you're going to create a 5-step value scale. It's also in Schoology, and I can show you that again in a second. But for each of these, what I did is I just used my ruler and I measured them so that way each box is 1 inch across. So 5-step value scale, so it's 5 inches across. And then I had it for the width of just 1 inch. So it's 1 inch wide by 5 inches long. You're going to create 4 of these. Neatness does count, guys. So this part you can draw out in pencil. You're going to have 1 for hatching, 1 for cross hatching, stippling, and scumbling or scribbling. Like, that's another name for it. So what I wanted to do is just demonstrate these with you and for you. I know some of you have done some of these before, so this is where I'm going to ask just in a minute, hold off working on what you're doing, and just so I can go over, because you have some options for some of these. Now this is what you have. Hang on, I'll do it this way. In your kit, the micron pens. I'm going to ask that you hold off on using these until you get to your actual pen and ink piece itself. All right, we're going to do some preliminary work, and I only have 1 of these pens for each of you. So I'd say use something else just for the preliminary work. You can test it out if you'd like to, but just hold off on using that. A couple of other viable options. This is just a marker. It has a really nice fine tip. The other one that works well is going to be something like a Sharpie marker with an ultra fine tip. Either of those can work super well for this particular section. So for your hatching lines, and let me see if I can kind of bring this down a little and get a little bit closer here. Okay, I think that's a tad bit better. So for your hatching lines, and I'll show you some examples after I'm done with this. So hatching means you're going in one direction. So here's the deal. All of your lines that you're drawing are going to be parallel. So the closer your lines are together, the darker your value. So when you're working on a value scale, going from light to dark or dark to light, you're actually going to have your lines that are further apart, okay? So the closer they are together, and you don't need to use more pressure, just use them closer together so they can, and that's going to achieve a darker value. Now, in this case, I have lines that are vertical. I could do a value scale, and I would say just keep them all consistent, going in the same direction. If I wanted to instead, as long as my lines are parallel, I can actually have them all going in a horizontal direction. Again, same thing, the closer they are together, you do not need to add additional pressure here, the darker the value. All right, and you're gonna fill your boxes, they should be nice and neat. Now, so I have a vertical hatching line, I have a horizontal one. You can also do this on a diagonal. Now it's going to be dependent on, what it is that you're doing for your selected piece. You don't have to worry about this yet. We'll talk more about technique and how it relates to what it is that you've selected. Okay, so you can do vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and guess what? You can even do like a contour hatch. Let's say you're drawing an individual or some sort of an animal that has wavy fur. So in this case, or let's just say you're working with shading of an object that's curved and you wanted to use like pen and ink techniques. So you could actually do the same kind of thing, guys, and working with a curved line. Okay, same thing goes, of course, the closer they are together. These all should be going in the same direction. Oh, sorry, you can't even see that. Now I'm looking at my paper and not the screen. All right, so the closer they are together, the darker your value. So these would all suffice for the actual hatching. So when we move to the cross hatching just means you are crisscrossing your lines. So for the cross hatching, same thing. They all should have some sort of lines that crisscross. The closer they are, and it's the one thing which is a key component here, you don't need more pressure, okay? Because otherwise you're just going to ruin your paper. You can start to also add direction to these to get darker. So in this case, I just added more lines, but I can go right ahead and start to work in to different directions to also make it darker. And with these, you're welcome to incorporate your vertical, your horizontal, your diagonal. You could do the hatching if you want to. When I work with pen and ink, I always like to take my marks and go away from me. Instead of going toward me, I just find it to be easier for the process. With this, you are welcome to complete these techniques in either A, your sketchbook, or B, on one and only one of those pieces of Bristol board. Let me slide this up again. Okay, and so that way you're going to achieve your darker values there. So this next one that I'm going to show you, I'll just move my paper down, is your stippling. So this is one that a lot of people find to either, I feel like you either like the process or you find it rather annoying, to be very honest with you. So stippling is your dots, and it's a lot of dots. It's very effective when you're trying to show areas in an object that are very, very shiny, or I mean, this can work with everything. And you know, you can maybe appreciate the concept behind this, especially once you start this process. I had a student one year, and I like bringing this up, who actually used, they decided they really wanted to do broccoli. So they drew out broccoli with all the little green flowerets, but they did the whole thing in stippling. I wish I had an image to show you. It was absolutely beautiful. It took them forever. So the stippling definitely is one of those things I feel like you can zone out, at least I can, and really just keep going with the process to really help along. So the closer your dots are together, your dots are not getting bigger, but the marks you're making are just closer together. Okay, so don't use a bigger pen or anything. All you're gonna do is put them closer and closer together. So here's just a couple to show you. Okay, so here is your stippling. Here's your examples of your hatching. Here is your example of cross hatching. And then we only have one more to cover, and that is the scumbling. I have a question. So yes or no, how many of you have done these or heard of the scribbling or scumbling concept before for pen and ink? You guys hit your yes or your no. I have some yeses and some nos. Okay, so okay, this is a cool one, and you might want to, you know, you guys are also welcome before you start your value scale, even just on a scrap piece of paper, you're welcome just to test out these techniques. I would say keep one whole piece of this paper. The top part's going to be for specifically for your value scales. You're going to use the bottom half for something else. That second sheet of paper that you have, you'll need that whole sheet for your pen and ink piece. So if you want to do any testing, I would not test out on the, do not test out on the Bristol. Okay, so the scribbling or scumbling technique, this is what it looks like. It has like little scribbles, and they're all relatively this kind of like similar in nature. So as you're working with the scribbles, in order to get darker values, your scribble lines are going to be, again, the same. They are just going to be closer together. This can be a real effective technique, especially if you are working with something, let's say you are working with like trees and stuff like that, like a landscape kind of concept. It would be beautiful for foliage. It also works really well if you have an animal that has like a tufty kind of like technique. I had a student who did a beautiful pen and ink piece, which I believe I will be showing you, just not today. They actually had a dog with a little teddy bear in its mouth. It's a stuffed animal. And they used this scribbling or scumbling technique for that, and it really worked out super well to show like the texture of that teddy bear. So here is the scumbling or scribbling technique. So notice again, the lines are not even further like apart, there's just more of them. They all are relatively the same kind of scribble or same time kind of a line type. Okay, so for your value scales, you're going to do something along that line. Now I did post in, and I'm going to share my screen with you just to show you. I did post in Schoology. Let's see. Let me go back. Okay, because that was the hand assignment. And in marking period 2, the value scales. So I did post in here an example of what these could look like. Now, if you take a look in here, the value scale is more than a 5-step. All you really need to do is a 5-step value scale. You do not have to outline it like this one shows for each of them. Just keep in mind the hatching. All your lines should go in the same direction. They should just be closer together for darker values. And you are welcome to work from either dark to light as these do, or from light to dark. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so you have an example of each of those 4. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing there. And does anybody have any questions so far? So far, no? Okay. So for this part, I'm going to stop recording in just a second here.